I've been particularly excited to have this conversation with you because, as I've now said 4 times before we try and get this going every time, um, I am particularly peeved, annoyed, put off a little bit when people proudly declare that their work life is totally separate from personal life and oh, I'm one way at work and I'm one way at home and leave your problems at the door. So you are on a mission to flip that script. And you're writing this book, Work is Personal, which I haven't even read it. It's not out yet, but I can already tell you, I'm going to drink the Kool-Aid. I'm on board. I'm sold. But I'm curious what inspired this calling for you to help create this paradigm shift in the workplace?
Well, probably the net effect was that teams that knew each other better performed better and had better results. And I regularly encountered this tension about the things that would help that be possible, although I was not at all encountering tension about driving results. So, knowing that that is something that is now research proven to drive performance, the conversation has opened up more, in my opinion, to talk about how does connection and how does being personal while still being professional actually create the environment that allows people, teams, organizations to do their best work and to have joy and to be fulfilled in the workplace, whatever type of work or team or organization that is. I was lucky enough and to be a chief human resources officer, a vice president of HR, director of HR, all different opportunities. And oftentimes I would experience someone saying, "Well, don't talk too much about that. That don't make people feel like you're not focused by talking about that personal element." Yet the personal element was what everyone remembered and people approached me about. And maybe that was a 2-minute story or a 3-minute interactive component of a presentation. And I just became fascinated with why do we do this? Where does it stem from? How did it start? And how can we help people of all perspectives strike a better balance that allows people individually to be fulfilled and enjoy and perform well, and also give the organizations and the teams what they want, which is results and performance. So it's been something I've always been interested in, and now it's something that I'm able to employ strategically to help teams and organizations with their employment brands, with their HR strategy, and ultimately with the alignment between their HR strategy and business results.
I love that you said that you're helping them become aware of the tensions. Isn't it interesting that we all crave from such a fundamental place human connection and to be understood and to be heard and to experience joy. But then for some reason, you said you became obsessed with uncovering why. So I'm curious, like what are the causes of some of those tensions? Because we all crave these things and then we show up to work and it's like, we don't get it, it's almost unnatural to experience those things. So what are some of those the causes of tension?
Sure. Well, one of the origination points, but a really interesting one to me of this idea that it's not personal, it's business, came because in the 1920s, it's accredited to a mobster accountant, a guy that was counting the numbers and, was just making sure that he could tell people, hey, we just shut you down. It's not personal, it's business.
It's
And like
business.
the perfect way to position, I'm going to do whatever I want and you're going to have to deal with it because it's not personal. And it makes sense that it came from kind of that environment a little bit to me
Yeah.
because that's one extreme. And then there's the extreme that I think everyone is, and this is part of the tension that people get nervous about. They think that if you're talking about something that doesn't have the exact language of the metric that you're measuring, that you're
Mm.
being frivolous or not, or that it undermines your own effectiveness or credibility. And there is a balance. And the interesting part is finding those evidentiary points where, which I've been really interested in. The latest one, Heather, and then we'll come back to this.
No,
This
yeah.
amazing piece of when I was writing, looking at the percentage of new hires that are now boomerangs go up and up and up and up over the last 5 to 10 years. And a boomerang is when an employee exits an organization and then comes back, for those who may not have heard that terminology. And so, if you, like I've witnessed this, when people say, get the hell out, we turned off your email, have a nice life, like we're done with you, that's an extreme. But do you think that person's ever, I mean, and yes, if someone stole from you or broke a law, you still want to exit them respectfully. But I'm talking about if someone perceives that they got a better opportunity and you treat them like you were betrayed, like you were stabbed in the heart, and you
Yeah.
treat them poorly on the way out, they're not coming back. And what happens though is boomerangs, in addition to increasing that comeback rate, where that lowers your recruitment costs, it
Yeah.
lowers your onboarding cost. And if you treat your exiting employees well as alumni, that is two of the highest places of both employee referrals and client referrals for companies who have alumni programs. So my point is, it's just so fascinating to me that there's real evidence to say caring, be kind, and it for different organizations, how they do that in alignment with their values. And it's a better business practice. It's not just something that I'm saying I feel as a person. We all have feelings and values that we believe are things in the way we treat people. And organizations' employment brands, there's a huge opportunity through being personal and professional to increase productivity, profitability, morale, and decrease costs that impact our hiring and retention numbers and um, our client acquisition.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to hear some more of these data points that clearly geek you out because you mentioned them and like your face lit up. So you must be, are you a data gal? Do you love data and
Well,
studies
I'm
and
learning to love it more. I do. I love the power of it. I love the role that it's played in allowing me to engage in a more effective dialogue about things that I believe in,
mm,
and I also welcome. That makes our business conversation complete,
hmm.
because there are things that I believe, feel, and some things that you can prove with data. And business conversations tend to be more effective if you have that proof.
They do. They do.
And
It's
I'm
so
all
fr
for it.
Are you? I mean, I am too. I do love, I was gonna say it's so frustrating. 'Cause I see both sides of it. I see the frustrating side where it's like, oh, but don't make me pull the data. We're just talking about human beings here. But then the other side of me has absolutely appreciated when you have the moment where you have this belief or you feel like you're onto something or you're spotting a pattern and you just need that extra step of discernment. And then you go and you find this great data point or study that totally supports it. You're like, yes, that's so validating. So I do see both sides.
Yeah, and I think what's exciting is I understand the pressure, and I know you do too, of if you're a 500-person organization or team or a sports team, you may not have the budget to have a director of employee alumni affairs. That seems like that's not realistic. You can still, there are simple practices that you can implement that are going to put you on the plus side of those benefits, those valuable things like reduced recruiting costs and, it ramp to contribution of a new hire when onboarding a boomerang or someone else. Get that done more quickly so that there's a contribution faster. There are a lot of different components that make those business decisions easier when you're looking at the evidence of what it provides, of course.
Yeah. Would you say that it's fair to say, you haven't written or you've written the manuscript, it's coming out next year, that with these data points that you are using that as an opportunity to reach the people who are maybe skeptical about the subject. Like, let me show you that strategically caring for someone will reduce your cost and increase product. Like, you're on a mission to like prove it from a data and productivity standpoint versus the kind of emotional or pulling at their heartstrings.
Yes, I want it to be a component of the ongoing conversation about how effective employment brands are built and why it is the way that's going to be performance driven as well as personally gratifying. So each phase, the whole framework that we talk about in the book, it's called Be Real. And it
Okay.
spells Be Real, and each different letter in Be Real talks about the phase and how to make things personal and professional and profitable as you go through how to be real with your employees or your teammates. And most of this translates into any team environment. I did write it from my experience perspective of corporate HR and the way that that has worked and the way that the research is done in that area. And the practices are simple and apply to all different types of teams when you want to have a caring environment that allows people to flourish and do their best work. So it is something, I do believe it's a case for my position. And I love engaging in the dialogue because there are lots of different perspectives on this. And that perfect balance, which produces the right value for your investments, isn't going to be the same for every organization. This allows people to make the right plan that's going to support their organization's employment brand and the results they want to achieve.
Nice. So does the Be Real, is that a framework for the simple practices, or does that a framework for those like critical moments or situations where they have the opportunity? Because like you already
Sure.
mentioned the exit process, that's a critical
Mhm.
moment. So does Be
It is.
Real following the moments or the
It
practices?
follows the moments. The practices
Oh.
are in each section of the moments. For example, the B is for before engaging for employment. Like before you ever hire someone, and what are you really doing to show and convey the reality of your caring posture and your ability to bring personal interaction to your team and organization. And then by the time you get to the end, it is talking about leaving and what does that look like and how do you, so inside each section there are principles and practices that address that time in the relationship. And then at the end, it also talks about performance is driven by the personal nature of your engagement with the players, like the people, and what a summary of why that is the case and the supporting evidence. And then it goes into again the different moments with additional tools and resources depending on where you feel you are in implementing the practices within your own team or organization.
I love that. I love that you are intentionally following the employee journey and showing or proving or providing cases for or highlighting the very practical ways that you can care for people in those moments. Oftentimes when we talk about caring for employees, and it just stays very much in that I don't want to say Pollyanna, but that fluffy kind of emotional but it's a very practical and real conversation as well and strategic.
Absolutely. And we've all, I've been called the HR lady, or, we don't need anyone on the executive team that's representing HR because that's not really as strategic. Well, and I'm not saying that sometimes at different stages in organizations' life cycles that these different structures or perspectives don't have some validity. The people component is always going to be a strategic asset. And I don't know that there's anyone who argues with that. The way to get the best return on investment, there are different perspectives. And I've heard, you're right, you're perceived as almost frivolous if you're too energetic or focused on people's feelings the feelings are a big driver of whether or not people are focused. If their feelings and their mental health, and we're not talking about work as therapy, we're not talking about work as interventions for our real challenges that we have in life.
Hmm.
We're talking about acknowledging the whole human, which I know is new language that other people use. It wasn't really anything that I'm using it because I think it's recognizable and appropriate. But just it's you don't come to work and change who you are. And you mentioned people say I'm different at work and at home. And sure, I might use some different vocabulary in talking about, federal acquisition regulation than I do with my son who's putting away socks. Uh, and we're still that whole individual. People are thinking about their children while they're at work. People are thinking about their medical issues. People are thinking about what they have to make for dinner or who's going to pick their dog up from the vet and that's okay. It's not something to hide. We can't get distracted from our objectives. And when we make people compartmentalize, the research also shows that does not boost morale. That does not incite innovation. And so it's actually figuring out how do we create the space and the time for people to get to know and to share vulnerably and authentically a little bit about who they are and why the work matters so that that can actually be a connection because the
Yeah.
why is something everyone talks about. People need to know their why. They have a personal why, they have a professional why. And the intersection point between those two is a gold mine of, discretionary effort and just unlimited, ways to flourish when it comes to getting the most out of your own fulfillment, but for the company, the organization. It's okay that they want to get the most out of you. I don't blame them, right? They want to have a profitable employment relationship or team relationship. And in order to do that, it can't be, don't be who you are. Make sure you don't tell me any of your problems. And there's a balance, and there are certain things that are starting to show what you can do very professionally, very strategically, to be personal and to ignite both those things, profitability and relationship.
Can we just pick, maybe you can pick your favorite touch point or moment, or maybe a scenario, a common one that leaders find themselves in that maybe they overlook the power of getting personal when they're in it.
I think the thing that most often comes up for me is this idea of the first time your life is inconvenient to the objectives at hand. And what I mean is when someone is sick or when their child has an issue or they need to go take care of their parents or when they ask for vacation in the middle of a time that's really busy. And we would need context to know how appropriate and what the depth of all these things are. It's We show as an organization what's really important when we never let people take a vacation, they're always working. We show that we don't have a plan for when people exit by just never writing them a note of thanks to say thank you for your contribution. This is what you
Mm.
really did here. So there are so many moments, and the reason I encapsulated that in the first time an employee has gotten to a place where they've got to say, you know what, I need an extra week because of this, or I when you've got to open up about a challenge you're having. And as a manager or as a leader, do you really want to have any more barriers to getting things done?
Mm.
No, of course not. How do you handle that? And how has the organization equipped you to really find out what's going on and of what we do have in our employee assistance program, the full complement of resources? How do we support you through it while you still focus on getting the things done that you're responsible for? And those two things can both happen. And sometimes they can't, and that's a whole different context. Most of the time, they can. And you've got to be ready for that. And that's probably when people decide whether or not you're for real I need to take PTO and they're nope, you can't do it because we're in the middle of QBRs, or is it just a patent no, or is it could you wait until could you wait a day, or could how do we compromise so that you do get the time off and we still adhere to the schedule for the whole team? But it's how does the organization respond? And is there a program and a practice in place that demonstrates realness and authenticity, not just robotic, read the handbook?
You're so right. That first moment that they've got something going on, it's the first maybe uncomfortable ask
Hmm.
that you've made of your leader, which I mean, you could work for someone for almost let's be honest, 6 months to a year and not have that first ask yet. How the leader responds will greatly dictate the foreseeable future of that relationship.
Hmm.
I would guess too that, asking for a week off, which is a lot. I guess what I'm trying to say is the weight of what they're asking for may vary person to person, right?
Of
So like
course.
one person could be asking for a week off and the other could be to take care of a sick parent. The other person may be asking to leave 2 hours early to catch their son's program at school.
Hmm.
Do you do leaders ever find themselves in, or that you've come across, find themselves in a situation where they will be the judge of someone else, the importance of like, no, you know what I mean? Have you ever
Yes.
seen that before?
We do have a bias to think, our own things can sometimes be more important than others, or give assign value to other people's priorities when they have a different setup for their priorities. Yes, we've got to balance that. We've got to be consistent with people. Everyone can't leave the same day 2 hours early because we have to over time, the consistency of being flexible for people is going to convey that it wasn't a rote response to just no, no. It was what's going on, and like you said, the gravity of the situation, some of those, it is easier for people to agree that an illness is different than maybe needing to leave early to miss traffic or something. I know that's not a realistic ask, but things and so is it every Thursday for 2 years you have to leave early, or is it there's a series of events that are happening and could you log back on and finish your work at night? Coming up with some kind of solution, and not every time do you have a solution. And if you're working regularly to try to find solutions consistently across the team that you're working with, that conveys a completely different posture as a teammate and employer and leader than it does to just follow rules only. The rules
Hmm.
are there for a reason, to mitigate risk and to add value and to do the things that are important with the consistent application of business policy. And people are going to need support to get through different things and still be able to go to work. So it's navigating all of that. And so knowing what the times are where things like that come up, knowing what possible flexibility you can design into your processes at the different phases of the life cycle of an employee or a team member of an organization, you can be prepared and your leaders can be better prepared. Because if people are already tired, exhausted, feeling overworked, they're more likely to just say, you know what, Heather, no, I'm sorry, you can't leave early. Forget it. Like, I can't leave early, you can't leave early. Everybody's here. Forget it. And it may not be conveyed with that level of lack of emotional intelligence. However, that sometimes
Right.
it does happen. I've seen it with some incredibly caring. They're like, "Why would you even ask me that?" Or you really asking me for PTO right now, or just an electronic refusal of, "Ugh, why would they do?" No
Oh,
talking, no explanation, just not even knowing why they're asking. And all of this, you think it sounds like what these are all personnel issues. Uh, they're people issues because and when things aren't going well from a productivity and performance perspective, sometimes it is skills enablement and sometimes it is things that are quote unquote business. Many times it's personal challenges that we do have tools and resources from a benefits perspective or an ability as a manager or a teammate to provide simple support that will change everything. And we don't want to just hire someone new who doesn't have a problem at the moment. We want to keep someone who knows how to perform and knows the job and needs help in So there's people who might say I need a 6-year sabbatical, and I would probably say I'd really like to hear how you think that would work, but I'm not so sure that it's all that feasible. However, shutting things down and just being, again, it goes back to robotic. It's not what creates engagement, and
Yeah.
engagement leads to creativity, greater morale, greater productivity, and ultimately drives results.
I caught two simple strategies in your explanation. Maybe they're in the book.
Hmm.
We can stay in that scenario if we want, is the importance of guarding your reaction, like
Hmm.
self-management. And then I also heard the importance of questions. Like, and I know you are an HR executive, so you could coach and ask questions in your sleep. But is that one of the simple practices that you go through? Is one how to self-manage in those moments, but then also, using questions to help you understand the context of what's going on. Even like I think you said, like, well, how do you think we can work that out? I'm curious if I'm catching on to something.
Yeah, well, you're definitely correct that there's discussion about our own, it starts with us. You have the employment brand and the way that that's conveyed through the body of people that are working together. And then you have you, and you have both working in together. One of the things is, yes, how do you personally get in a better position to be personal and professional in support of performance and the people? And we have to be self-aware, and we have to be able to manage our mindset, manage our leadership approach, our communication, and the way we build teams. So there's definitely a component of that in the book. And there's also a component of, I talk about in more than one place, the the fundamentals, really. What are fundamentals? And that means not only individually do we need to practice our questions and listen, how does an organization or team do that?
Mm.
Because I think we're developing this in parallel. The individuals involved in conjunction with how do we realistically convey and operationalize the caring of the organization. And yes, we talk about that throughout the Be Real framework. And then there's definitely a component of, okay, you can start today with you. And I think
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very much about practical. So regardless of what models and things that we implement across our own personal development, it's really powerful to start by trying it out
Yeah.
on ourselves.
I'm curious, what other fundamentals? Like what goes into the bucket of fundamentals for you?
Well, the first thing is, do you or don't you believe that work is personal? And if the answer is no, then until you can feel like you genuinely believe it, don't build the programs and practices around it. And I'm
Mm.
not, that's not a, it's just, it won't come across as authentic
Yeah.
unless you actually believe that. So this is intended to be a tool to help you with that. And there may not be, there are people that I have really enjoyed working with who may still not agree. However, I think they would say we did some things that made them think about their posture because they were really helpful in some workforce transformations that they were a part of. And we did things that are directly from what's talked about in this book. And it was new to a lot of people who'd been in the environment, maybe not to the level of the mob, definitely to the point of check that at the door. I don't want to hear about your daughter. We need to focus on the P&L. I want to hear the pipeline review. Of course we do. And if you're distracted, like tell me what's going on and let's get focused. How can we do that? So
I feel like
transformation.
maybe I am just completely, and I am confidently ignorant in a lot of things. But how can it, like, why is it 2025 and people are still out there? There's 60,000 leadership books that are people are still, don't talk about, like, focus on it just blows my mind that going back to those core fundamentals, the importance and consistency, not only of doing them, but of people like you talking about them, because there are still people out there that it just blows my mind that can't allow themselves to be a human being at work for
There are
whatever
other
reason.
There are people out there. I don't know why we don't hear as much about it, maybe, or maybe we're just, I don't, I, there are other books about this topic and I've read them, and there's some things that are similar to the way I look at it. And there's some nuance, I think, too, and some totally original components of what keeps evolving as we apply these things to the workplace and to teams. I think culturally we really went through a period in the Industrial Revolution and the world of work where it was about process more than people. And I love process. It helps to drive so much, and it's a big piece of quality improvement. And the people are what drive everything.
Hmm.
And in the world now, this discussion will be more, even more rich, because I'm sure someone's saying, oh, well, they don't anymore because we have AI, or whatever the opinions are. If you look throughout history, it's been the people who believed in something that actually changed things. And there have to be it has to have great operationalization inside of it, strategy, all those things. It starts with the people. So if you have a soulless organization, it will not be a place that attracts people who care about their work and transform processes, products, and actually change the world. So I'm not sure. Hopefully, it'll be more vibrant. I do know there are other people who've written about this topic. I think it reminds me of this idea. We get a little bit stuck in our own time frame, and what I mean by that is, it's like the whole thing where people say, "Well, women in the workplace, not in the workplace." Well, for the history of the planet, women were out in the fields, in family businesses, in tents, were doing whatever with their children on their back, or they're toddling behind them, or they're working with them. And it's only in this last century where it was delineated. You're working in the workplace, or you're going everywhere doing what you're called to do. And so it's some of it's cultural, is what we've come up to this conversation because we stepped away from, of course my family business is personal, to, well, now we've got a mafia or mob accountant saying it's not personal, it's business. And then we were like, oh, that sounds convenient. I don't want to deal with all the things that come along with people, but I want them to do great work for me. And it got distorted.
Hmm.
And now, as we're seeing the outcomes of great people when they have relationship, and certainly Google's Aristotle Project Aristotle was helpful in this as well. Just finding out that, oh, it's not education, it's not IQ, it's not geography, it's not anything that created our highest performing teams. It's psychological safety of them being able to do their best work and feel safe and heard. And so I guess things seem to go in cycles, and I'm hopeful that this will put an end to this conversation seeming like it's a frivolous, overly effusive individual who just wants to have group talk all the time. That's kind of championing for this kind of treatment of teammates and employees, because now it shows that your business and organization and team performs better when you do this. So there's no downside.
Yeah. I'm very much excited that this will close the gap between understanding the value of being personal and making work personal and caring and knowing how to do it.
And I'll say I am too. And I don't know that I would love it if it could. I don't know that it will close the gap, because there are neuroscientists out there who know even more about why this is all working together in our neurology, that I am not equipped with that yet. And it's not, neuroscience is mentioned in this, but that's not me. And I'm not. What I mean is, we have to, I love the idea of it further igniting the conversation for whomever has expertise and can bring their voice and that expertise to the dialogue, to the conversation, because there's quite a bit of accessible information that a lot of us are aware of, especially in the talent development, HR, workplace, and in general business leaders, from Gallup, from WorkHuman, from places like Project Aristotle. More and more things are coming out to show just even that whole niche of the potential of your boomerangs, what that does. That in itself is fascinating. to lower recruitment costs, to get more client referrals, to have more employee referrals. Most organizations I talk to, and I'll say I would estimate greater than 75%, get the majority of their new talent from referrals. And definitely the organizations I work with, the majority say their longest tenured, highest performing, kind of what you would call a superstar, came from someone who knew someone, usually.
Mhm.
Not all the time, of course.
Yeah. And you would never, no human being would ever confidently refer their place of employment to a friend or a family member if they felt like a number, a cog in the machine, right? Yes, even if they haven't had a critical moment or a difficult conversation, which I want to dive into here in a minute, even just as a daily engagement strategy, not just understanding that work is personal in those critical moments, but it's critical for just ongoing loyalty and engagement and motivation. Like we've got to know people on a really personal level to even keep them around to have those critical conversations.
Hmm. Agree. And you made me think of something that I think people can relate to, which is easily there are probably three specific people that I'm thinking about who I was the one that managed their exit, and they did not like how that went and the circumstances, some of which had to do with me personally, some of which were a part of my job and my HR role. And the way, the vocal nature of how negatively they spoke about the company. Now, some of that is their personal choice of how they behave, and we all do things at different times. But it really impacted because I met people who, after I had a relationship with them, said, you know what? If I had gone by what so and so said when I met them at that one conference, I never said anything because I wanted to make my own decision. But do you know this person? They don't like you and they don't like this company. And I said, I didn't say much, honestly, but it was interesting to me. If you have a detractor, and you can't make everyone satisfied, and the goal is to treat everyone well regardless. And when you do, there's a personal benefit, I believe. There's a business benefit as well. Um, so the conversation is relevant, it's real, and it is, you were saying people talking about these things. Oh, it is vibrant.
Oh,
It is,
yeah.
people are talking. And I've heard some things that have been accurate, some things that I believe are inaccurate, but let's get engaged in the conversation. Let's not pretend it's not happening. And let's employ what we find out in, to go back to data, with critical mass to actually do something about it. We can't respond and react to every comment or opinion. However, there are things that we can do for our employment brand that will be beneficial.
You've used that word employment brand a couple of times, and I'm curious, what might you say this, how do I articulate this in the best way possible? When people hear the phrase employment brand, that is
Mm-hmm.
an HR phrase.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that HR is constantly fighting the battle of like, it's not all on us. Like, you all are a part, like leaders, you all represent and determine this employment brand. It's not about what handbooks we build and recruiting messages and recruiting marketing and what we put on the website. Like, yes, that's a part of branding. So I'm curious, what might you say to anyone who's listening that might hear the word employment brand and think, oh, I'm not in HR, but maybe they lead a team. Like, what's your message for those people in terms of
Mm-hmm.
their contribution and impact on the employment brand?
Well, the employment brand is the known and perceived personality of your business or your team. And you have micro moments that aren't micro to the people that are experiencing them with you every moment, in every meeting, every interaction. And those moments, individually, when you agree with the values and the mission and vision of your organization, whatever type of organization it is, and then you demonstrate that and behave in that way, you're living your employment brand. And I will say, in John Gordon's work, John Gordon is my co-author for the book you referenced, Difficult Conversations Don't Have to Be Difficult. And he's the 30 plus best-selling author. He's my mentor who's taught me so much. And he used to call me like, don't bring that corporate HR lady today. Be the other Amy. Like, because I'm very, that's where I come from. You can feel it, you can tell it. And going back to the question, we both had the same shared vision and mission, and we were bringing it to life in different ways. However, and people who said, well, what do you guys do? We're about positive leaders and teams who positively impact others and create a more positive world. And so your employment brand is how you're bringing your personality and your mission, vision, and values to life.
Hmm.
And do people believe it or not?
Yeah. And for leaders to recognize their part, maybe making it really personal for them is the employment brand might be from the organizational. Uh, uh,
If you don't believe it, don't be there.
that's it. Yes. But I like what you said to your team branding. You said the word team too.
Mhm.
Or your employment brand, your team brand, your leadership brand. The employment brand is made up of the consistency across all of the leaders' own personal
Mhm.
brands. But whether leaders want to admit it or not, or to acknowledge it or not, they are creating a brand on their team that is impacting the larger organization's brand, certainly impacting productivity and all of the data metricy things that are really important to those.
And just to your point, yes, there are levels of brand for individual, team, organization, and just because I introduced his marvelous work into the conversation, I really align with the way we get to the heart of that inside the John Gordon work. We ask, what does your organization stand for and what they want to be known for? What does your team stand for and want to be known for? And it is a subset. The
Mm-hmm.
technology group in a company they're like, we stand for, people not having to wait 2 days to get back online, or, we want to give you the equipment you need to get your job done. But it all flows up into that macro level. What do we stand for? And then Heather, what do you stand for? What do you want to be known for? And when those things are aligned and connected, there's purpose, there's passion, there's power, and there's productivity.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right that team leaders or individuals shouldn't feel like I can't do anything about this because I don't necessarily like
I'm
the
not in
the
HR,
yeah, yes, it's um culture, again, another great John Gordon quote, but culture is not one thing, it's everything. It starts with what we think, value, and believe. We start to bring it to life by what we say, and we make it great by what we do about it. And we each individually are always shaping the brand and the culture because it's not static. It's always, you're deciding all the time. Is
Mm-hmm.
this real? Is it not real? How do I make sure, as a business leader, how do I give my leadership and all of the people in my team the resources they need to care and show and demonstrate care, personal care about the people who are doing the work in alignment with the goals that we have to obviously give them a paycheck because people
Mm-hmm.
want that direct deposit. And we need to be able to go into our business meetings and say, oh, look, our numbers are up. And so is profitability. And we can continue to invest in some of these programs that are important to the people that work here.
You mentioned in an earlier conversation that difficult conversations, which was your last book you just mentioned that you co-authored with John. You mentioned that it is a part of this idea of work is personal.
Mhm.
So I'd love to segue into that lane a bit. Also, semi-selfishly, because I love this framework so much because in the lane of consulting I found myself in, which is organizational health, we talk a lot about the importance of healthy, productive conflict, and arguing and passionate debate in service of what's true and best for the team and the organization. And usually everybody agrees with the idea that difficult conversations or healthy conflict is important, or they come around to the idea, but how is not always addressed or very obvious. So when I first went through the framework, that I was thinking and saying to other facilitators, thank you. this is a great answer for the how. So I would love what if you can just briefly give me the a quick run through of the star 3 model.
Yeah. Well, I want to share with you, and that whole concept came about because John Gordon and I were having a conversation about the power of a positive team. And those were the principles and practices that through all of his work and through the work that we did, I got to be a part of, but through his work, he was making note at the end of the book about how elite teams got to where they got. And he noticed that one of the key factors that separated normal, regularly good teams of all kinds, including businesses, from those elite teams was the ability to have the difficult conversations. And when we were talking about it, I said, I don't like it when you call me and say, are you ready for a difficult conversation? And he's like, well, what do you want me to call it? I said, I think that what we think about it matters. Like they don't have to be so difficult. And I think we're predetermining by using that label. And not that whole discussion became the dialogue of if this is one of the things that gives our clients and the people we work with what they want, which is being elite at what they do, how can we further expand on the how, like you said, because there are many ways to approach a challenging conversation. And we took the best of what we both had seen and put it into that star 3 model that you're mentioning. And it starts with the S. And I'm not going to go, I'm happy if anyone reaches out to go through the whole thing. You can probably tell I love this topic. And Heather is so gracious to listen and to do this work together because we do work to help make just optimal and optimize performance for teams and individuals and organizations. The star 3 model starts with S, and the S stands for small ego, big mission. The we has to be greater than the me. And small ego, big mission doesn't mean you're not important, but it means, do you really need to have a conversation if it's not about what you've agreed you're doing together? Like, and sometimes people say, I'll say to them, what is the mission? And they're like, I'm so mad at this team member. And they've got all kinds of legitimate concerns and there's real conflict. And then they don't, well, you're doing some work together, whether it's a family, whether it's a sports team, you're doing something together for a reason. Tell me about that. Because starting with what is the mission anyway? And is it about you, which is the bigger question? Is it about you or is it about us and what we're doing together? And I like to say, if you realize it's about you, that's the part is the first conversation you need to have is with yourself.
Mm.
Not every conversation needs to be had out loud. And I think we all know that people usually say, "Oh, you're here doing a keynote or a workshop and it's about conversations and you're saying they don't have to happen." And I think we all know that. Lots of them don't have to happen. And that first kind of delineation is it about you? Is it about me and my own win and my own? Is it about we? And how do I shift into more of the we, which one of the things I do with teams is to think about what is your shared vision and mission anyway, your purpose.
Yeah.
And is this conversation something that's productive inside of that or not? And there's a how for each of the steps, and each
Hmm.
letter in star 3 stands for one of the approaches, one of the practices,
Yeah.
and there are 3 R's, and that's why it's star 3.
I love that. When you talk about small ego, big mission, it made me immediately think of the movie Bridge of Spies. Did you ever see that movie with Tom
No.
Hanks and Mark Rylance?
Mm-mm.
A fantastic movie. Mark Rylance, he's one of those names you might not recognize, but you would recognize his face. And I think he pretty confident he won an Oscar for this movie, but he plays a spy from another country. And Tom Hanks works for the CIA, and there's a scene where, Mark Rylance has been captured and they're in the interrogation room. And I mean, this guy is an enemy of the state. He is a spy, but he's quiet. And Tom Hanks is questioning why he isn't worried or stressed, like why he's not getting a reaction out of this guy that's been captured. And the phrase he says over and over is, would it help? Like, would it help? Me and why I don't know why that made me think of it is that gut check of, okay, is this about me? Okay, what is the mission? This is having this conversation going to help? Yes or no? Yes, awesome. Then we go to the T, right, which is tell the truth.
Hmm.
And
Because how
then
can you tell the truth in a way that anyone is going to be able to receive it if you're not thinking about the we and you've taken the focus off of yourself and your own wins? And we there are two sides of the truth. There's giving it and receiving it, and usually people tend to say, "Oh, I can tell you the truth, girl." And well, can you receive it? Can you actually, and that first S is really about examining some of the truths in the situation before you
mm,
move forward. What you were just saying about the movie and about would it help, it reminds me of, we know this as readers of books and personal development, professionals. It makes me think of the Socrates. I think of my friend and colleague Tim Larkins, who, when we were working on feedback almost 10 years ago in a company, he brought the method from Socrates, which is it useful? Is it true? Is it, there's, I can't remember all the questions. We're There's a little bit of, absolutely, of course, there's us in the star 3 model because it's what we've seen and heard. And when you look back across times, we were talking about fundamentals earlier. It's amazing how some of the fundamentals apply across all the models. I've seen some amazing models. I won't name them all because there's so many books about the topic of conflict and conversations, and I love them. I've learned a lot from all of them, mostly. And there's even, Wiley has a productive conflict assessment that I use with teams and organizations. It's great. We've got
cool.
it's really good. If you'd like a sample of it, or anyone listening would like a sample of that, I would be happy to send it. It's such a great tool just reading the sample assessment. But practicing in our workshops and keynotes, we say have the conversations to get better and get better at having them. So it starts with
Love that.
76% of people avoid conversations that they think are going to be challenging. And then once you start having them, people don't tend to know how to do it because they've avoided it for so long. So first you've got to have them, and then you've got to get better at having them, and you need tools and resources. So our Star 3 model and some of the things that we provide are tools and resources. There are others, of course.
It's
And
fantastic
John,
though.
yeah.
That's why we love what we do and why there's 60,000 leadership books. It doesn't matter that there's multiple ones on the same subject. What it matters about the person that is reading it and is like, that's the one. Like one of them will click, right? And it's just a really simple way to, whether it's on a whiteboard, on a piece of paper, or even before you have a tough conversation, just to reframe your mind around how to confidently enter into that seemingly difficult conversation. Reminding yourself that, okay, I need to have this, I need to lower my ego. And so don't I mean, the power of we
Of a
love
tool.
frameworks, right? Asking us to pick our favorite model is like asking you to pick your favorite child. Like you just can't. But I just loved it. And so I was curious if you had a favorite or one of your favorite stories or testimonies, maybe that's come out of a workshop or from a leader that you've worked with that has used the STAR model, kind of like a transformation story about, I tried this with my team and here's what happened.
Yeah, I'll actually send you the case study because we turned it into a case study. And
Cool.
I've heard I'm starting to hear more of these because it's a relatively new book. It was only published. We've been using the model in some other work for a while, but it's relatively new. I really enjoyed, it's a top 5 wealth management institution, and they had a team of coaches that were joining because they had acquired another organization. You know that there's a lot of movement in the financial industry, and the approaches and of this team were very different. They had, to your point about models, they had different models, they had different frameworks, and they were in love with theirs, not the new ones. And they were required to serve all these people that were a part of this, integration that was happening. And it wasn't going well. And the team, it wasn't, I don't think it was a disaster, but it wasn't going the way of unity and alignment.
Sure.
And So they worked through the Star 3 model, including creating their own rules of engagement in conjunction with the model. And over a 9 to 12 month period, there was another administration of one of their surveys. And they saw in this group, the net promoter score go up. There were engagement scores went up. There was a productivity kind of correlation between what was happening and the adoption of using the services coming out of this group during the changes and transitions increased. So that was,
Wow, that's
it's kind
awesome.
of fun because it has a full bundle of
Hmm.
metrics and situations that, no matter who you are, you're like, oh, that's pretty comprehensive. That's because it's not always easy to prove correlation between organizational development programs and the totality of the business result. I
Mm.
can't say that 20 new customers came in because these people were working better together. We do ask questions that lead us to make you know reasonable, reliable kind of correlations. People still want to have, I've talked to people over the years where you've probably been in the same situation. They're like, you're going to say that we got all 30 of those new employees because of just we did that training last week. Maybe, maybe not, but we know that over time we'll track what is moving, what is making the impact, what is changing things. And so this was a really cool example. I'll just tell you one of this is my last one because I know you're like, gosh, she is passionate about this.
I love it though. No, I
Is
love it.
my colleague and dear friend Julie Nee and I have both been in situations in the past 6 to 12 months where we've applied our own work. And we don't just do this with the Star 3 model, but talk
Yeah.
about models. We've taken models that we use and we've encouraged each other and applied them in some situations with in-laws, with spouses, with children, with community members, with fellow volunteers, and some of the volunteers organizations we're part of and the teams. And some of those stories are places where I was so encouraged because people said, what exactly? I said, I'm just trying out. I want us to try this thing. And I'm not trying to be self-promotional, but this is really based on lots of practical experience and observation and just watching people say, oh, I hadn't thought about my ego in relation to this that way. I hadn't thought about just something that was new to them that they were going to see differently. And so at the end of our conversations, we use the conversation preparation plan that we provide in the workshop. We walked through some of the conversation starter cards. We have the star model and then there's star
Cool.
cards. And so we talked about other scenarios. And the goal is to give each other, there's a grace model inside the A step for how to assume positive intent in others. And how do you do that? Well, you give grace, and there's something you do on each element of grace. But so
Oh,
the examples are growing, and I look forward to sharing more. And I'm happy and delighted when people reach out and share them with me. And if you are interested in the productive conflict report, that is a totally separate product from Wiley. But I also would be happy to share the conversation preparation plan with someone who is interested in that too.
I mean, I think every leader, not just me, I geek out over the assessments, but anybody leading a team, a productive conflict assessment is that's cool. I can't that is neat. Yes, I want to check that out, especially because I do some work with that as well on teams. So, anyways, love the Star 3 model. For anybody looking for a practical framework on how to make a seemingly difficult conversation actually not so difficult, check it out. I would love to wrap things up, Amy, with just a fun lightning round of human questions that aren't necessarily related to difficult conversations or the world of HR or employment branding or all of the things, just to let people see a glimmer into the human side of Amy versus the HR executive expert facilitator, best-selling author side of Amy. Are you cool with that?
Of course, yes, I'm happy to share.
Awesome. So just intended quick questions, kind of your gut quick answers. Your go-to cure for writer's block.
I don't have a cure for that. I've had some pretty big blocks. What I've done is I haven't done one thing. I don't have a go-to cure, but I know that it means I usually try to go and research or explore and go into discovery mode versus productivity mode. So I would say that's probably what I do. I step back and go discover more to inspire myself.
All right. If your new book, Work is Personal, were to have a playlist, what would the vibe of the playlist be? Or maybe a song on it?
Oh gosh. This is so, I played this once in a training and it did not land the way there's this song called Come and Get Your Love, Come and Get Your Love, Come and Get Your Love Now. And like it's just, hey, yeah. What's the matter? Come on. Like to me it was like, let's solve this problem. What's that vibe? Come on.
Go.
Just engage with me. And I don't know that that's what anyone would expect, but in that particular training, I think people were confused and I needed to give more context, but hopefully that makes a little sense or not, but that's my
Didn't
answer.
land. That's all right. When I read the book, I'm going to listen to the song when I'm reading it. All right. A leadership value you hope your kids carry into their own work one day.
Being honest with yourself and with others. It's not easy. It's of course, when those things are hard, like we were talking about, sometimes it's a truth you might not be as excited to share.
Hmm. Something that always makes you laugh.
My husband, he follows me around with his phone. Sometimes he's like, "Hey, have you seen this clip? Oh, do you?" He knows I love stand up and I love Nate Bargatze and I love all kinds Jim Gaffigan and there's so many and there are all kinds of Leanne Morgan and other women who are coming that I'm learning about. I love to laugh. And if there's a problem and we need to solve it, he's like, "Oh, hey, I've got something for you to watch on YouTube." And and I'm like, I do think that's funny, honey. I think that's really funny.
I love that. Okay, then something that always makes you cry, or like a quick cry, something that could like every time.
Yeah. Well, it's not even a bad cry, but the thing that can bring water and tears to my eyes is thinking about my mom who passed away on Thanksgiving of 2003, 6 months after I had my twins. And, the things that she was a part of because she's such a good mom makes me happy, gratitude tears, and the things that she's, quote, missed makes me cry because I know how much
Yeah.
she would enjoy them. And just thinking about seeing her again.
I did not mean I am taking you on a roller coaster. It's like funny question, kids, funny
I'm
question,
rapping, I'm
mom.
crying, whatever
All
I'm
right,
doing.
a couple more. A hobby you've always wanted to take up.
I'd like to be better at cooking. My husband is the chef, and I am the person that everyone begs me not to cook. I'm really not that bad, but compared to him, I'm not as adept. And so I'm always thinking, I'm gonna get in there and kind of figure out a couple signature dishes besides, tuna sandwiches and crock pot meals.
I mean, I love a good tuna sandwich. Don't
I
underestimate the quality of a good tuna
I
sandwich.
think I need the right audience, Heather, because people don't want the celery and the little tidbits of things inside their tuna in my household. They like the straightforward things, and they're not interested in Swiss chard. They don't like, they're like, "Mom, what are you making?" And oh, you don't want some garbanzo beans inside your salad? No, they don't. So
That is so funny. That's so funny. Okay, two more quick questions. A key part of your pre-workshop or pre-speaking routine.
I always pray that I have eyes to see the things that will be most helpful for the people that are in the room. And I'll just tell you, recently I did a session on John Gordon's latest book, The Seven Commitments of a Great Team. And we didn't have time for this one particular activity. And so instead of everyone doing it, I had to select, which I try not to volunteer people. I try to give them space. And I was so grateful. There's so many times when this has happened, but I selected this woman in the back of the room who I just felt called, and it was the most amazing thing. So that is a big piece, is just praying for eyes to see where the opportunities to actually achieve the goals and perform the work that's going to be of most value for everyone, individually and collectively.
All right, last one. Amy P. Kelly. I am Heather P. Italiano. You keep the P in your name. Is it intentional?
Thank you for that one. Yes, it is. My maiden name was Amy Jankaitis. Jankaitis is Lithuanian. I loved my maiden name. Everyone told me in kindergarten that it was Amy bronchitis, laryngitis,
Oh
hepatitis. Your
no.
name sounds like a disease. And I kind of missed that because it was fun. I was, it was, wow, does it? And I realized that when I married Jim Kelly, people started saying, besides they say, oh, the quarterback. I'm like, no, no, no. It's my husband is James P. Kelly too. He's got a P, but it's Patrick. I started getting introduced, and then people would say, nice to meet you, Kelly. And who knows why I wasn't memorable enough for them to catch the Amy. I wanted to make something going back to brand, like what I was intending to convey. And something that was really important to me was I looked at my name with the P. I wrote the P on a piece of paper in cursive, and I was looking at the Amy P. Kelly. And I thought, you know what? Inside the Amy and the Kelly, what's inside? That P stands for the power on the inside of people to fulfill their purpose.
I love
And
it.
so that's the P is very intentional. And this work, like work is personal. There aren't enough P words in the world, I think, and positive and personal and profit. And it's,
I love that. Well, thank you so much. This was super fun. I cannot wait. I'm very, very excited for your book whenever is it, can we pre-order? Is it
it
available?
is. Thank you for asking. It is on Amazon for pre-order, and you can go ahead and place those pre-orders now. Looking up "Work is Personal," Amy P. Kelly, and
Amy
you
Power
on
Kelly.
yes, on the inside. You've got the power on. You've got a P, whether it's literal or not. You have a P on the inside of you. Your own
That
purpose,
is
your
so
own power.
funny. I love it.
But thank you for saying that. And yes, it'll be out in first quarter of 2026. I believe it's going to be early February, but pre-order is available now.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This was super fun. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but this was great. I'm glad we worked through all the technical things. So thank
Thank
you.
you for your generosity to engage in this conversation with me, Heather, and for listening.